Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's program with author Amy Fish, who wrote this incredible book, I Wanted Fries with That, How to Ask for What You Want and Get What You Need. A little bit about our author. Amy Fish is the ombudsperson at Concordia University in Montreal, Canada. She is responsible for promoting fairness and making sure everyone's voice is heard. Amy regularly teaches, speaks, and writes about how to stand up for yourself and ask for what you need. Amy's work has been published in Hippocampus Magazine, Reader's Digest, Huffington Post, and several other journals. Amy's new book, I Wanted Fries with That, How to Ask for What You Want and Get What You Need, came out with New World Library in the fall of 2019. If we haven't met before, my name is Rabbi Elizabeth Mendelson Graff, and we are so happy to be hosting this program. Port Jewish Center, I should say, is in partnership with the Jewish Book Council. Amy and I were speaking a little bit before the program began this evening, and she said this is one of her last presentations since over the 2 years that the books came out. So friends, I think this is going to be good. So what do they say? Save the best for last. So in that being said, I know you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from Amy Fish. So Ms. Fish, we turn things over to you now. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi. Of all the talks that I have booked, in other words, this is my last one.
Yes.
Right? So that means I've been touring for this book, virtual and not virtual, for 2 years. And so have I left anything? Have I held anything back? That's what I have to try and think about just for you. I don't know. Okay, so we start off with a little reading. Before we get started, there's one thing about me you need to know. I'm a chronic exaggerator. My stories are all true, basically, but I tend to add colorful details to make you laugh or make you think or to protect somebody's identity. Let me give you an example. In the book, I tell a story about speaking at a fancy luncheon for fancy ladies who lunch. It really happened. I tell you that one of them asked for my advice about her husband, who is constantly on his cell phone. That happened too. But I don't remember for sure if they served crudité with salmon tartare or Pacific bluefin grilled on the roof of a car. All I can tell you is that whatever it wasn't a PB&J. I have to pause and see if you're laughing because I can't hear you. It's not real. When you're muted. Okay, so now I want to discuss with you the characters who appear in these stories. The people I'm talking about exist for the most part, but I may have given them a makeover, which could possibly include changing their name, age, type of pet. I might make an uncle into an aunt to protect his, her, or their identity, or because it flows better in the story. I might make a blonde into a brunette or a bulldog into a Boston Terrier, but I will not turn a blonde into a bulldog unless she absolutely deserves it. So now you know a little something about me, and that is the style of this book, I Wanted Fries with That. The book has, I think, 27 chapters, does it? Yeah, it has 27 chapters. You start off complaining about the easy things, building your muscle, and by the end of the book, you're a strong complainer and you can complain about absolutely anything. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is how I became interested in complaints and how I became an ombudsperson, then how I became a writer, and then how this particular book came to be. How does that sound? Is that what you figured? Okay. So let me tell you how I got interested in complaining. So my husband sells soap to restaurants. And I don't know if any of you have ever done business with restaurants, but they are famous for not paying their bills. And so he asked me if I would go to the office and help him out. And when I had right after I had my third kid, and I had like a master's in health admin, and I had always worked in the field of what they call patient safety, to be polite. But patient safety is medical mistakes. And I had always worked in medical mistakes, analyzing them, researching them. That's what my master's was in. I worked in big hospitals, small hospitals. I worked for the American Academy of Neurology in Minneapolis. And then we moved back to Montreal. He started his business. Now I've just had my third. And he says, you know, I really need your help. And I need you in the office doing collections. And I figured, like, I'm a decent nag. I can call people and collect money, very similar to nagging people to get their work done as a project manager or whatever I had been doing. And I did that for a few years. But the good thing, like the really good thing, is that the business took off. It started to go like this. But the bad thing is the collections became more complicated and I was totally out of my depth. So one day, it was Friday afternoon, I said to him, you know what, like, you need someone who really knows what they're doing. And I have a career that I left to help you do this. So I said, like, I'm going to go back and do health quality improvement, healthcare mistakes. But I said, it's so specialized. It's going to take me ages to find a job. So don't worry. The next day, I'm putting down newspaper for my kids to paint. Does everyone remember newspaper? Do you remember newspaper? So I'm putting newspaper for my kids to paint, to cover the table. And what section do we ever not need? The career section. And so I'm putting down the career section and I see an ad for something called an ombudsman. And it's at a Jewish nursing home. I know you have them in New York too, like the Hebrew home or whatever. So ours is called Maimonides and Jewish Elder Care. And they're advertising. So they can't say they want someone Jewish because it doesn't work like that in Montreal. So it said like someone affiliated with the Jewish community. They wanted someone English, French, bilingual. They wanted somebody with a master's in health science and administration. Like, it practically had my picture. And it was 3 days a week, 10 minutes from my house. Imagine. So I fire off my CV and I send it in and I get an interview like Monday or Wednesday. And the next day they call me and say, you have the job. And that's how I became an ombudsman. It was like meant to be. And they trained me on the job. The guy who had it was leaving. And he spent 2 weeks explaining to me how to do it. And what we do is we receive complaints, we investigate the complaints, and then we offer recommendations. So people complain to us if things are unfair. In Canada, it tends to be a more senior position. Like, I always report directly to the board of directors. I know in the States, it's sometimes someone who works in HR, but lots of organizations have ombuds people. Coca-Cola has one. Harvard University has one. The United Nations has one. The reparations for people, the Holocaust reparations, I forget what that organization is called. They have one. And the point of it is to ensure fairness. And that's how I got into fairness and complaining. And that's how I became an ombudsperson. And the one funny thing I'll tell you, because like the rabbi said, this is my last one. I'll leave nothing on the table for you, is that I didn't change my name when I got married. So my name is Amy Fish and my husband's last name is Budman, and I became the ombudsman. And he was like, this is your chance to change your name. And I still didn't do it, but it would be so perfect on my business cards. But I didn't have the heart. After 30 years, it's like at this point, it seems a little late in the game. Anyway, so that's how I became an ombudsman. So now, how did I become a writer? Well, I'm looking at the time. Should I read something else? No, I'll just tell you. How I became a writer was this. I started to notice as complaints were coming into my office when I was working in the nursing home, I started to notice that some complaints get more attention than others. And it's not only because of the merit of the complaint, it's also because of the way the complaint is delivered. And I really felt a responsibility to level the playing field. And I thought, how am I going to teach people to become better complainers so that all of your complaints will be heard and all of your concerns will be heard, even if you're not skilled, even if your delivery isn't on. So I thought, here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to start writing about it. This is just an idea in my head. And I said, there's a local paper, a tabloid, a weekly. I'm going to call them. So I cold called them and I said, hi, my name is Amy. I'm the ombudsman at Maimonides Elder Care. I'm thinking about a column called Ask the Ombudsman, where every week I would give a complaint and then I would say how I would resolve it. And the editor said, sure, that sounds great. Now I'm a writer. Okay. And I'm delivering this weekly column to this tabloid and I'm loving it. I'm like, this is fantastic. So I always would give trainings and workshops at work. And I had one that I loved to do that I called how to deliver bad news. And I used to give my how to deliver bad news talk to frontline workers, like what you would call personal support workers, an orderly, like someone that really does the heavy lifting in the hospital, because nurses and doctors are often trained to give bad news, but the people on the front lines often get very difficult questions. Do you agree with that? And I just felt that specific training was needed because, they're the ones who come and collect the tray, and you'll say, my mom's not eating or my dad's not eating. And sometimes they're like, oh no, she ate before, because they're not equipped. They don't know how to say to you, yes, this is rough. So I'm giving my talk about how to deliver bad news, and the units like it, right? And so I'm going to all the units and I'm explaining how to give bad news. I gave it at a conference in Nashville to train other people on how to do it. And then at a certain point, somebody raised their hand and said, could you come and do stand up at our Christmas party for the union? And I said, I'm teaching you about bad news. This is not a comedy act. And she was like, no, but I just love listening to you. So then I'm like, okay, I think I'm onto something. I'm going to go around and I'm going to start talking to people about how to complain effectively. So you see how it kind of grew? So here I am, I'm writing the column, I'm talking about it, I'm talking about it. Now people are approaching me. I have this complaint, I have that complaint, I have that complaint. And if you look in the book, it's not all about, there's one healthcare example and one university example. The other 22 examples are just from my travels of coming and talking to groups like yours, or talking to people, getting stopped on the street, or my girlfriend who had a problem with her dry cleaner after her son's bar mitzvah. Real actual problems that people just talked to me about, and I collected them. And I was blogging about complaining, and I have a blog called The Complaint Department, and I would write about how to be a good complainer and funny stories that happen, and maybe there's a little parenting sprinkled in, because when you write about parenting, you get a lot of traffic. So I would do that here and there. And my great uncle, who passed away a few years ago, I think 3 years ago, said, you have so much to say, why don't you write a book and I'll publish it? So I wrote this book, The Art of Complaining Effectively. By the way, my husband refers to it as a pamphlet. Would you like to see why? Because it's very, very thin. Apparently that's from a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, but at the time I thought he was being very original. Anyway, so I wrote that book. Now we're getting into how this particular book came to be. And I didn't think it through. I knew nothing about books. I didn't even really know that you were supposed to read it over. Okay, I printed out the book, basically. I gave it to my uncle. We put a cover on. And now all of a sudden I have 2,500 books in my garage with no distribution plan. I hadn't thought further ahead at all. And my deal with my uncle was he was a philanthropist. And so he did it for me to be nice, but I was not allowed to make money off the book. So it wasn't like I could just throw it on Amazon. I was really stuck. What am I doing? So I get on the phone and I start booking myself on a little media tour. I get on the news, I get on TV, I get here, I get there, and everyone wants a copy of it, which is fantastic, but it was a real distribution problem. Like I said, I'm never doing this again. If I write another book, someone else will have the headache. I was selling it out of my purse. I have to tell you, I was in line at the grocery store and somebody would say to me, hey, didn't you write that purple book? And then I'd be like, sure. Here you go, but just pay it forward. And they'd be like, I don't want to take it from you. But that was my deal. You understand? I couldn't take money. So I would just say, give $10 to the next person you see who needs it. And then if I would go to an organization like a shul, let's say I would bring you a case of books and then you could sell it for whatever you wanted and keep it for whatever you want. And now we have none left. So at this point, I really, really enjoyed writing. And I thought, this is really fun. So I took a writing workshop here, and then I Googled writing conferences within driving distance. Now, I don't know what your definition of driving distance is, but I found myself en route to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is 8 hours away. So it was a schlep, but my husband came, my daughter came at the time. She was young enough that she would still want to come with us. And we went to this writing conference called Hippocamp. But I didn't know that it was the first year that the conference ever happened. So I'm going to read you a little story from there. This is chapter 23. How to get on the kiddie coaster with your 3-year-old if you are wet and black. I'm at my favorite writing conference called Hippocamp in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And this time I sit down next to a woman who is knitting a pale blue baby blanket. I tell her how much I love knitting, but I can't knit and take notes at the same time. She says knitting helps her listen to the presentations. We chat a bit more. She works in education administration. I work in education administration. We both write nonfiction. Her daughter plays basketball and she always knits at games. My daughter plays basketball too. And I also knit at games. Well, she says, my daughter's Black and she plays on an almost white team. I knit so that I don't embarrass her by calling out. This can't be possible, I say to her. My daughter's white and she plays on an almost all Black team. She doesn't want to hear my voice at all. When she first started to play, I may have accidentally yelled offense when they were on defense. And that's when I lost my credibility and picked up my knitting needles. Angie introduces herself. She tells me that she's sad today because her mom passed away 3 years ago from dementia. You are never going to believe this. 3 years ago, my mom passed away from dementia, I say. Angie opened her arms. I fell into them, and we've been friends ever since. Okay, so what happened at this writing conference is that Angie told me this story about trying to get on the roller coaster with her kids. And they're all Black, obviously, and they're all wet because they had been in the water park. And so she tells me this story and I say to her, can I use it in my book? And she says, yes. So the writing conference is a few days. Go home, I'm writing the book, I write this chapter, I send it to Angie. Now, I don't always do that, but because of the really delicate nature of this topic, I just felt more comfortable. So I sent it to her and she says, I didn't know you were writing a book. I said, Angie, I asked you, can I put it in my book? She thought it was like my book, like we're all in the writing conference and like someday I'm going to write a book. She didn't realize it was actually a book. So thank God I sent it to her. Can you imagine? But what I want to tell you about this is a few things. First of all, I think it's very interesting that when she read it, she wanted me to even turn up the race volume even more than it was. And I really wasn't sure how she would react, but she wanted me to go a little bit further. And so I did. And I'm really made it my commitment to use my platform to talk about race. And every time I have the opportunity, I read that chapter. And I started doing this in 2019, which is a whole year before the Black Lives Matter movement. But already this was a problem brewing that we were worried about and that we were thinking about. And I have really made it my business. Now, we, like you and I, have a war on our hands. So we have like other problems that we really could be talking about. But I made this commitment to myself and I've really stuck to it. I also always talk about elder care and the work I did there. Sometimes I read a chapter, like if I have more time. And those two things became the biggest social issues this year during COVID. So it's really crazy that we talk about them. We've been talking about them for the whole prior year. The other thing I want to tell you about in my last 5 minutes is, so all of that is great, but how did we get to the French fries, right? How did we get to I wanted fries with that? So at this very same conference, do you have, I don't remember this, but do you have a store called Rainbow in New York that's very, very cheap? And like the women shopping there have face tattoos. You know that store? You like it, Jude? My friend Judy's on the call, so I keep looking over and smiling at her. So she lives in Port Washington, though, so it's like not cheating. Anyways, so I went to Rainbow in Lancaster and I bought a pair of shoes for $5, and I was very excited about it. So I come back to the conference room and I'm telling this woman next to me that I bought these shoes for $5, and I show her my shoes. And then she says, okay, can you watch my stuff for a minute? I'm on this panel. And I'm like, this is the agent and publisher panel. Why would she be on this? Oh, Amy Fish, what did you just do? Like, I just showed this fancy New York agent my $5 shoes. Okay. Like, oh my God, but it's so typical. Like, are you getting to know me a little bit? Are you surprised by this maneuver? No. Like, it's so typical of the kind of thing the stunt I would pull. So anyway, we got to talking after that, and she had seen me at the open mic night And so I gave her a copy of this book, and then she said she would work with me, but I had to write fiction. So I wrote a fiction book about a shy, quiet woman who gets a job in the complaint department of a sex toy company, which is funny, but the book is terrible. Now my other friend Lawrence just joined. So anyway, the book is terrible. So it went into my drawer. And so I still continued to work with my agent, and we pitched a bunch of different books and nothing worked. And I was at that moment where I didn't know, is it me or is it her? You know, I just wasn't sure. Is it me? Is it her? And then she said, okay, we're going to give it one last shot. And I wrote the proposal. And here we are. So that is my story. Now, in terms of how to be a good complainer, I have to give you one tip before we close, which is that the most important thing you have to remember when you're trying to complain effectively is that you have to do it. Even if you're not sure that you're speaking to the right person, even if you're not sure if you're 100% correct, if you do nothing, nothing's ever going to change. But if you speak up, you always have a chance. Think about that. So the most important way to complain effectively is to just do it. Just try it. If it doesn't work, you're no further ahead. But if it works, you've improved the world. So that's me. I hope you have questions. Do you have questions?
Okay, so thank you so much for that presentation and for introducing us to how you got to this book. I don't know, Marcia, you're nodding your head. Do you want to ask the first question, or do you want me to go first? Marcia, you go.
Okay. Well, I'm curious if you could tell us the rest of this. I love the book, by the way, and I did read it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure everybody is interested in the rest of the story about the Black woman and her kids that were wet.
Oh, Angie.
Can
Yeah.
you tell the story?
Yeah. So what happened? Okay. So just to back up, Angie was in the water park at the same place. Okay. So, you know, sometimes at an amusement park, they'll have also a water park in the amusement park. And so they go to the water side. And like at this point in this day and age, it's very difficult to tell what is a bathing suit and what is not a bathing suit. Do you agree? Because people wear halters, not as bathing suits, but then they wear long sleeve rash guards as bathing suits. And it's really all over the map. So they're all wet. And they come on to go on the kiddie coaster. And the woman says, you cannot get on the kiddie coaster because you're all wet. So she says, well, I'm wet because I was just on that ride and that ride splashed me. So the woman says, I'm not letting you on. And so like a little crowd starts to form. People are watching. And Angie's like, I'm going to hold my ground. You're not stopping this person. You're not stopping that person. You're not stopping that person. She says, go get the manager. And they go get the manager. Manager says, you're not getting on. You're wet. Angie goes through the whole thing again. Manager, 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 all the way until the ride is now stopped. It's at a standstill. And this is not a good look for them. She's in the deep South, and there is a Black woman getting upset. This is really not, it's very tense. So finally they say to her, fine, we'll give you a dry t-shirt. If you put the dry t-shirt on, you can get on the ride. So then Angie says, I need dry t-shirts for all 5 of us. And they say, okay, ma'am. They give dry t-shirts for all 5 of them. And to this day, her family calls, when she gets upset, her family calls it getting all t-shirt. Mom's getting all t-shirt. So that's the rest of the story, Marcia.
That's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about the structure of your book, because you divide your book into 3 parts. The first part is, I want my problem solved. The second part is, I want you to change. And the third part is, I want justice to be served. So could you talk a little bit about each part of your book and kind of how you divided it? You know, what qualifies for I want my problem solved complaining, and for each of the parts?
Okay, wait, I'm just going to look at it so I don't mix it up. Okay, when you are complaining effectively at its most basic level, you're complaining because you want to solve a specific problem. So this is where, let's say you're at the diner. Are your diners open? Nothing's open here. Okay, so let's say you're at the diner, your coffee comes, it's cold, you want hot coffee. That's the like, don't you think like that's the bottom row of problems? This is the most basic. I need my problem solved. I want my coffee hot. I have to exchange something. The person in front of me is leaning their seat back on the airplane. You know, basic problems. That's when I want my problem solved. So we start very softly. We start to build our complaining muscle very softly with just how to solve these day-to-day problems. When we get to the middle part, it's where you want someone else to change. How do you get someone else to change? You're complaining not just because you want to fix something, but you want to fix someone. Somebody's always chronically late for dinner. Someone has bad breath. What else do I have in there? Oh, you have a boss that's constantly changing their mind. So this is how do I manage situations that are a little more complicated? They're still within my day-to-day, but the situation's a little more complicated. We're still building. When I get to the third section where I want justice to be served, that's where, you know, somebody's parked in a handicapped spot and you know for a fact that they are not handicapped, whatever how we politely say that in a disability spot. You want, let's think, you see another mom do something or another parent do something egregious. You want to speak out against it, not because it benefits you, but for all of humankind. So that's the third section, which is about justice.
So do you think there's a time when people shouldn't complain?
Oh, well, I mean, listen, if you don't have the bandwidth to complain, I totally respect that. Sometimes some of us are just exhausted. So I don't sit in judgment of that, right? Like I bought a fixture, I redid my kitchen. I bought a fixture from Amazon. One of the lights in the fixture never worked. That's just the way it is. It's not fixable. I bought it, I cheaped out, and now I will never remember who I bought it from or where it was. And that's just what we're living with. And I didn't complain about it. On the other hand, if I get shortchanged, even if it's for 12 cents, you could be sure that I go back with my receipt and say I got shortchanged. Like everyone has their thresholds and their way of dealing with things. So yes, I believe there are times where it's not worth complaining, but I believe that's determined by you and your exhaustion level and how complicated it is for you at that moment.
Yes. So does anyone, I can keep asking questions, but does anyone have any specific questions about how to complain about something? Okay. Rochelle, we'll start with you.
So I'm wondering, these are very angry times, and so often the mildest thing is met with vitriol and, you know, things that we don't expect. Have you, I'm sure you've run into it, and I'm wondering, how that fits into the general scheme of things, how you would deal with it. Yeah, how do you deal with it?
Okay, but in this scenario, I'm complaining and the person is angry at me, or who am I in this story?
Yeah, you're complaining and somebody just lets loose on you.
Well,
yeah.
I think who's sitting next to you, Rochelle?
Oh, my friend.
Hi. 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 Did you want to add something else? I can't hear you because I hear like muffled sounds.
Okay, so they go ape. Oh, you say something. And you expect, okay, so I said it. And then instead of getting the response of, okay, we'll fix it, they go, blah, 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 blah.
Do you want to give me like this much more detail? Is this a specific story? Or you want me to just answer? I could just answer.
Well, what about, here's an example. Rochelle, do you have an example? I can give an example of that.
Well, all right, I yield to you, Rabbi.
You don't have to yield to me, but I would say, like, what if you say to somebody, would you please put your mask on?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it makes me uncomfortable that you don't have your mask on, and the reaction is not, oh, we're in a pandemic.
Okay.
It's reasonable that you might feel nervous.
Okay. I think when it comes to masks, we have to first of all understand what's in our control and what's not in our control. And I always defer to the law. And if the law is that you can walk around unmasked, then we really have to let people walk around unmasked. It's really not up to us to criticize them. If the law is that you have to wear a mask, like here you have to wear a mask indoors still everywhere, and the signs on the store say you have to wear a mask. If in that situation somebody is not wearing a mask, I'm comfortable saying, where's your mask? Now, personally, if you're asking me personally about me, I have not gotten into that with anyone because I feel it's a very fraught conversation. First of all, I don't know people's medical situation. I don't know whether they're ready to snap. I think a lot of people's mental health is very fragile right now. And so I can only control myself and my mask wearing. If I were a shopkeeper, that would be different. If somebody's entering my shop without a mask, that I don't like. I wouldn't have somebody enter my home, let's say, to fix something without a mask. That's in my control. So in a scenario where somebody comes in to, let's say, fix my air conditioning is broken right now. Imagine that the guy shows up with the missing control board and doesn't have a mask on, and I want him to put on a mask. I would have disposable masks available. I would take the disposable masks and I would say, oh, hey, here you go. Right? Simple. And then let's say the person said, I don't feel comfortable and I'm not, then I'd have to say to them, you know what, I thank you so much for coming, but I don't think it's going to work out for today. Then I would have them leave. I would call the company. I'd say, I need somebody masked. Can you please send me someone masked? So that would be my example. If I'm in a store and somebody is not wearing a mask and I want them to, I mean, I have to really ask myself, who am I to want this? And I say to the person, I don't feel comfortable. And the person says, I don't care. We're sort of at an impasse because they're really under no obligation to care, to be honest. So you've opened up your heart and you've said how you feel. They don't care how you feel. And I'm not in a position to force them to care. Okay, mm-hmm. Let's take scenario 3. It's a family event. If it's a family event and you're really looking forward to seeing each other, but you want people to wear masks, then my absolute number one advice to you is communicate early. We are getting together this Friday at 6. Masks will not be optional. If you don't have one, please let me know. I will have masks and sanitizer available. If you don't feel comfortable wearing a mask, I love you, but we'll have to wait another little bit till we can see each other again. Does that help you, Rochelle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just that there is so much anger in so many harmless transactions these days.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but we have to I guess the questions to ask ourselves are, can we walk away from these transactions?
Yeah.
And can we expect that people are going to be more upset than usual? And can we ourselves put on what I like to call our bunny suits? And just be a little more gentle and a little more tolerant. Mm-hmm. And if not, let's extricate ourselves. We're patient. We'll wait.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Eileen,
you're muted.
Yes, I was years and years and years and years ago, I was never assertive. And I took an assertive training class so that I could ask for things. And at that time, they gave information on the right way to ask for what you want. Mm-hmm. Do you include something like that? I'm sorry, I haven't read your book yet, but I wonder, do you have any advice on that, on the right way to ask for certain things?
Well, Eileen, I come from a line of parents who thought that the right and wrong way to do everything was completely in concert with what they believed. Okay. And so I would always say, how do you know what the right thing to do is? And so it's not my terminology. So to say there's a right way to ask for something kind of implies that there's a wrong way. You know what I mean, Eileen? And so for me, it's if you're going to stand up for yourself, I'm excited. It doesn't have to be perfect for it to work. If you stay quiet, that's what I don't like to hear. That's what makes me sad. And my alternate title for the book was Pass Me a Hanky, because the story of not speaking up is the saddest story of all. But everyone liked the fries.
Don't you feel that you might get a better result if you ask?
Yes. I think that the way to get, what did they teach in this course? Now I'm really curious. Do you remember?
Oh gosh, no, not to be confrontational, to be direct.
Right. Okay. Well, I agree.
The example was that I had purchased something in a store and it wasn't the right thing. And I never before that would take it back myself to return it because I got married very young. And when I would go to return something, the salespeople would say, "Where is your husband?" That was a long
time ago.
I'm married 59 years, so that's why. But I went into a store And the suggestion was, if you don't get a response from the salesperson, to ask for the manager.
Yeah.
And they took it back. And the whole time I'm walking out of the store, I thought, they're going to call me back and say I made a mistake.
Well, look, I think that being direct is important. I actually spoke to a group in Denver last week, and one of the questions was, the person was overcharged. She went to a store and they charged her the wrong amount, and she didn't say anything. And now she wants to go back to the store and she doesn't know what to do. And I said, so let's talk about, how would you ask for that? So now you're in a store, you're charged the wrong price. Okay. And so the scenario was, the prices were on the shelf, like it was not priced by item. And so, sometimes you're not sure if something got moved to the wrong shelf. It's hard. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So what I do in that situation is I play dumb and I say, oh, this was $15.99. I'm sorry, it must be my mistake. I thought it was 2 for $11. I'm confused. Hi, sorry, could we just check the price on this? This was how much? And you charge me for this? Get them to walk you through it. You could do that in a restaurant. You could do that in a hotel. You look at your bill and then you just say, oh, how did that add up? And get them to walk you through it. And then, so that to me would be the right way. The wrong way would be to come out guns blazing. You charge me the wrong thing and I demand a refund right now. And the reason I think that's a wrong way is because, to me, that's going to be ineffective. You're not going to get the results that you want. I mean, another thing that I think is wrong is lying. I don't like lying. So one of my first talks, like a million years ago, we were talking about how to negotiate when your plane is canceled and how to get on another flight. And somebody said, well, I always just say I'm going for a funeral. And it works perfectly. And she said, Amy, what do you think of that? And I'm like, the karma. Like, if I said I was going to a funeral, I would never sleep again, because I would be completely convinced I have just murdered someone. And I would be waiting by my phone, checking it every 10 minutes, going, who did I just murder? Like, this is terrible. Like, I could never do that. So I just said to the woman, look, because imagine it was at a restaurant. It was a long table event. And I said to the woman, like, if what you're doing works for you, you don't need me. But I will never endorse lying to get a complaint across. I couldn't. You have to live with yourself and your ethics and values. And as an ombudsperson, I mean, all I have is my integrity. That's it. So there's no way I'm going to compromise that. But if you do, as the kids say, pop off, means go ahead. Right?
I, by the way, would feel the very same way, that if I said somebody died, like, as I'm saying it, someone's going to drop dead somewhere in my life. Like, I would never do that. I agree.
Never.
I would never. I think everybody is kind of the same way. That would make me completely freaked out, and I'd just be waiting.
Yeah.
I just, I was just wondering, like, so you talked about ways that you definitely wouldn't approach things, like, especially, I think, in the first part, like the first set of problems, which I think are the ones that we deal with most of the time, like it's the little things. It's like the sending the food back, and I mean, I grew up with a mom who's on this call and who has no problem, she's the Sally of ordering and no problem sending her food back. But I think it's like, when you talk about like how you send it back, and Mom, you do a fine job. But like, it's not, I think all of us have been out to lunch with someone who the way they treat the wait staff makes us cringe. Right. Because one thing you want to complain, like, so could you just talk about that a little bit?
I think when it comes to complaining in that kind of situation, it's really about forming a connection. If you have an okay connection with your server, then it's not going to be a cringe. So for example, you could say something like, have people been complaining about this tuna today? Has anyone else complained about it? It seems off to me. I don't know if it's me. Has anyone else complained about it? Just ask a question that is not, or you could say, if you really like, let's say you're shy and this is like a baby step for you, then you don't say anything. But then when they come to you and say, is everything okay? Then you say, actually, this was a little off. Something tasted funny. I've been here before. I always order the Cobb, but today It's just a little funny. Do you want anything instead? No, thank you. Right? I'm not sure. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think I mean, look, I think in those situations, I often will say, like, usually the server, if you speak to them in the right way, will take it off your bill too. It's like,
yeah, but you have to sort of get yourself to a place where you're realizing that you're not only doing this for yourself, you're doing it for everybody else who's going to order this. So if you have something and it's not right, you're not only complaining because you think that, I don't know, what were we on, that the tuna salad was a little off, but everybody else is going to order tuna salad. Like, you're preventing them from ordering it. So it's not only for you, you're doing it for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, so you talked about like the way you talk to people in terms of the not staying calm or not guns blazing. You talked about not lying. Or are there any things that are like on your list of don't do when it comes to complaining?
Some people like to escalate right away. Some people will get on the phone right away and say, I need to speak to the district manager, vice president of human resource. Like, a lot of the people on the phone have a lot of power to help you. And it depends. It goes by different call centers, different industries, different phone numbers, different times of day. It's very variable, but a lot of times they have solutions in their pocket for you. Yeah. So I wouldn't be so quick to start making demands. I would first try my luck with the first person, because you might get somewhere. And you know, sometimes I have questions about, well, the call centers are all offshore and they're not in the US. Who cares? Why would I care where you're sitting? I want my money back. I don't care where you are. Like, it's like a ridiculous thing for me. Like, okay, maybe job creation is a political issue, but that's separate from right now wanting to get my problem solved.
I just think about, you know, when I, like, and by the way, if somebody has a question, like, raise your hand and I'll call on you. Mark, I'm just going to say, like, and then Mark, like, I just feel like, you know, there are times when I'm trying to get something resolved, and I think other people feel this way too. And it's like, you just hit so many walls, you just want to cry. And maybe you even do. It's like, and it's been a bad day, and this is important, and this person isn't helping you. And, you know, and so, you know, I think, by the way, like, I'm looking at all the chapters. I haven't had a chance to read the book yet. I have it sitting here, and Marcia read it and was like, it's hilarious and so helpful. And so it's like,
thank you,
literally, but I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, like, it's like, I want to read all the chapter titles to people so that they understand. I mean, and I want to just say, like in the first part of your book, which is the longest, you know, I just want to read a couple of things that you talk about. It's like, you know, admit when it says, like, how to, you know, for example, register for a sold out event. And then it says, admit when you're wrong. And it gives all these other things, like how to do this. And so some of the answers that you give are: put yourself in their shoes, go step by step, be clear and concise, use the resolution continuum, you know, be prepared to compromise. Which I just think, like, really for everyone, you know, we should, it's like, it's clear, like, if you want to laugh and also learn and have something to help you, like, this is the book for you. But I'm just wondering, like, when you're at that place of feeling so, like, overwhelmed, and, you know, like, you're in the right, but you're just so done, like, what do you do to kind of get yourself back to, like, task?
You know, thank you. And that is one thing that is in this book that is not in this book. But you can't get this book anymore. It's finished. And it's really not as good, believe me. But it does address that one topic, which is, I have a story in there of where I took my kids, and they were little, the boys were little, and I took them to the library to get summer reading, and she would not let us check out books. And I started crying, and I was like, they will not be Westinghouse scholars now. Okay. Now, first of all, we live in Canada. We do not have Westinghouse scholars here. It was not rational. I was weeping because I had finally gotten my two little boys. My daughter was a little baby in the sling. Maybe the kids were 4 and 6 or something. And I wrangled them, and I got them into the library, and I got them excited, and I got them to pick up books, and something was like paperwork, and they just wouldn't do it. And I just cried, and I was not solution minded, and I had nothing positive to say about it other than I left. Okay. Like, so I'm just telling you that because it happens to all of us. And I know that hot tier feeling of frustration where you've just hit the wall, and you just have to know that you're just going to call it, and you're just going to come back another day when you're feeling more creative, and you can come around another way, this way. My Talmud teacher used to do this. Don't think like this, he used to say, but sometimes you do. You have to think like this, and go around and go this and go this and go this. And that's just one of those cases when you're like, I can't do this on my own. I can't do this today. I'm finished. You just call it.
Thank you. Mark, you have a question.
Yeah, getting back to lying, which I agree, you shouldn't lie, but how do you deal with lies from the other side? Let's say the institutional lie. Like, nobody's ever complained about this before when you know 5 other people who have complained. How do you handle that when you know the person you're dealing with is lying to you?
Well, okay. That's a good question. Let me think. By the way, Mark, no one's ever asked me that. Can you imagine? So thank you. If normally I'm not interested in, okay, so now I'm the ombudsman and you're coming to me. I don't care about other people and their complaints. I care about the person in front of me. So the fact that 5 other people have shared this complaint, unless they have signed the paper or they're accompanying you, I don't care. So like a dialogue about, I know for a fact they have, no, they haven't, is not really for me a productive dialogue. Okay, so if you have an issue or a problem and you're bringing it to an institution, that's good enough. I don't know that you have to say everybody feels the same way I do. Now, so that's really what I could say about it. Like, that just seems like not so productive, respectfully, not the best, because you don't want to do this. I'm always trying to avoid this. You're muted. You're muted, sir.
I'm sorry.
That's
in
okay.
general, the person is lying to you. Okay. And they're lying to you. You know it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I'm more a strategy of how you handle that.
Oh, okay. So if I know someone's lying to me, I have a few options. One is to deal with someone else. Now, how do I deal with someone else? Either I hang up the phone and I call back and try my luck if it's a big call center, or if it's a small retail place, I go away and I come back. Okay. If it's an airline, let's say, and you have to deal with the person who, like, you're in a queue. So like, let's say the DMV or whatever, and you have to speak to the person when you get to that window, and the person's lying to you, then all I could say is you want to avoid a direct, you're lying to me. So you're going to have to come at it a bunch of different ways. One technique that I do that works for me, and I got this from my dad, who is a former Supreme Court justice. Okay. That is how I got a quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may she rest in peace, on my book, because my dad shared a cab with her. So this is a tip from that level, that echelon for you. I ask millions of questions. If I think someone's lying to me, I will just ask a jillion million questions, because normally they trap themselves. So I'm going to keep the conversation going as long as humanly possible. So, like, let's take a scenario. Do you want to give me a scenario? What are you complaining about? Or you want me to make it up? You have to unmute, though. I'll do your scenario, but you have to unmute.
I thought
Good.
okay, I thought I was hitting it. Let's say the price was published and now they're denying it was that price, but you don't have it in front of you.
Okay. So if you don't have it in front of you, you're sort of a little bit to blame. Let's be fair. So you may have to do your research and come back if it's like that. Okay. But if they're saying, it wasn't, then you could say, oh, okay. So I'm going to give you examples for this. Oh, okay. It was not $4.99 last week. Huh. So how much does it normally sell for? Right. And what day do you usually change the prices? And is that published in your circular? I don't know if you call it a circular. Do you? Do you know what a circular? Okay. Was it published in what day does the circular come out? Huh. And does anyone here have last week's circular? And is that done by store or is that regional? Like, I'm gonna tire them out. You see what I'm doing? And then I'm gonna say, now, is it true that when it's $4.69, that means it's been reduced? Like if it's a 6.9, it's been reduced, and if it's a 9.7, like at Walmart, sometimes you'll see, like, or Old Navy, $1.90. I'm very classy, by the way, you can tell, but $1.97. Okay. And does the blue tag mean something different than the white tag? And I'm like, I am not going to lose. Okay. So that's my technique for that. So I'm not going to come out and say you're lying to me, but I'm going to make it like so difficult for you to sustain this lie.
I love that. I'm not going to lose. I'm just looking at my mom, and I'm not going to say anything, but Mom, we have a relative like this. Okay. So
just getting good.
So I want to just make sure we only have a few more minutes with you, but I actually want to make sure that we get to the other two sections of the book because it's so good, Amy. And I just want people to know what's in there.
Thank you.
So, and I love part 2. I mean, I think you have a very audacious part 2. It's actually, I think, the most audacious in some ways, because part 2 is I want you to change. And, and I think it's very hard. I mean, it's very hard for people to change. And a lot of us are maybe resigned to certain people in our life just being the way that they are. And so I think it's really interesting. I mean, you have like how to get your guests to arrive on time for dinner, which I think is funny, especially since some of us are the guests who never arrive on time, but some of us are also, have like, we know that such and such a relative is just, they're always going to be, if you want them to come on time, tell them an hour early. I don't know. I mean, I don't want
Okay, I'm pausing you right there. Marcia, you said you read the book, right? So you know what the trick is. So Rabbi Mendelsohn, like I would have known you didn't read it. You know why?
Why?
Because in that chapter, the trick is you can't change them. They're never going to arrive on time.
Right. I mean,
I have to give it away. I have to give it away.
So, which is interesting because it says learn the serenity prayer. I should have figured that out. But that being said, you have which maybe goes into the second chapter or whatever. How to ask your husband. Here you say to put down his cell phone during dinner, but I think it's like how to ask your husband to do anything that you want him to do that he doesn't like to do. And you say, I want everyone to guess. What do you think the answer is that she has as her answer? You can feel free to put it in the chat or just put it in your head. So how do you get your husband to do something that you want him to do when he never does it? What do you think the answer is? Anyone want to guess? No? Who's saying? Marsh? I hear somebody talk. So should I tell you what the answer is? And then Amy, will you talk about it for a minute?
Sure.
So Amy's answer is set the bar low. I think that's really disappointing.
No.
Every woman here
no.
been married is laughing.
Okay, no. First of all, let me say this. Okay. My husband does a ton. So, and he's never on his phone. So this is not like at all about personal in that way for me. But the principle for me is that success breeds success. That's really what it could have said instead of set the bar low, but I like to be a little dramatic. Okay, but success breeds success. And like I said to Mark a minute ago, I'm always trying to avoid this. So I don't want to get into put your phone down, but I have an important job. I must sell this building tonight, but I need your attention. But I don't want that. I would rather have a situation where, okay, you have an important job. How many minutes can you give me? Can you give me 10 minutes? Can you give me 3 nights a week? What are you willing to give me? And then you'll see, like, I'm sure of it. Once you start getting 7 minutes, you'll be able to get 12 minutes. Once you get 12 minutes, you'll get a dinner. If you get 2 dinners, you'll get 3 dinners. You have to just sell it. And this is how you're going to sell it. It's like a free trial. Like, I'll tell you guys, I really wanted my kid to move out. I had a kid that was not in college and not working. And I wanted him to move out. I did not go for it. So I said to him, if you even take 1 class, I'm going to pay your rent. 1 class. So he moves out. I'm paying his rent. After a few months, he comes back to me and says, okay, I got this. You don't need to pay my rent anymore. I'm taking care of it. No one believed me. No one believed me that I would do it. No one believed me that it would work. Okay. But I really felt that success breeds success. Once he sees that he could do it and he's on his own and he's managing, it's going to go. Now, did he finish the class? No, he did not. Is he in college today? No, he is not, because he's a rapper. So he doesn't need school. Okay. We're very proud. But the point is, that's not the point. The point is that I got him out and I got him on his own. And I did it by setting the bar very low. If I would have said, if you don't go to a proper university and do a 4-year program, he'd still be sitting here in this very room that I turned into my office the minute he walked out the door. You understand? So the same principle applies with the spouse. You want somebody to do something for you. You don't have to make it this big. They don't want to do it. Make it this big. Is that clear? If I set the bar low?
Yeah, I think so. And so again, the last part of your book is I want justice to be served. And you already talked about, the story of how to get on a kiddie coaster with your 3-year-old if you're wet and black. And that I think is a really, is an emblematic story of, in terms of different things that we can complain about. I will say one of the chapters is how to get bacon out of the synagogue refrigerator, which I think is hilarious. So I guess there's definitely a Jewy aspect to this book.
Yeah. There's a lot of Jewiness. And actually, I'll tell you that in the story where the person is late, I made it a spaghetti dinner, but it's a Shabbos dinner. Just because the book was so Jewy, I couldn't take it anymore. Even I couldn't take it. So I just said they're all having spaghetti and gravy or something, just to make it like a little, I de-Jewed it a little. But then I always end up telling everybody the truth. So that's part of my bulldog blonde thing, like I give makeovers. So I just changed what they were having.
So I want to thank you so much for your time. This has been so much fun. And I just want to remind everyone, I know people probably have more questions, but you know what? You can get your answers in this really great book. And it's so well structured and such good information just waiting for you. I wanted fries with that. How to ask for what you want and get what you need. If you enjoy this talk and you think that you have a friend who might enjoy it too, I will be sending out a recording of it, also with a link to buy the book. We would, of course, prefer that you buy the book at your local independent bookstore here in Port Washington. You can order it through the Dolphin. That would be our first choice. But if you can't get to your local independent bookstore, then Amazon is a good choice as well. And you can feel free to also go on Amazon and write a great review once you've read the book. So, Amy, thank you so much for your time. This has been
thank you. Yeah, it really was fun to meet you all. Thank you so much.